This is our sixth anniversary, as we've said. So happy birthday to us. We're very happy. I remember in the early days when we met in person, every year I'd actually get us a birthday cake that we'd share afterwards, which is very fun. So I can send you an online birthday card or something like that. But yes, so we've been together 6 years. So I like looking up anniversary gifts. And so last year, I remember it was our fifth anniversary, and the gift for that is wood. And so the way we honored that was we actually sent some money to a charity that plants trees in northern BC to help combat all the wildfires that are happening. And so I thought that was a really beautiful way to kind of honor wood last year. And so I looked it up, and apparently the anniversary gift for the sixth year is iron. And I found that interesting for a few reasons. So, one is, of course, iron is very, very durable. And so I really like the symbolism of that, that like we're strong, we've been through a lot. We've been through having to move buildings and having a whole pandemic and having various ups and downs and technological issues and various wars, including ongoing wars right now that have religion as very much a part of them. And yet we've stayed true and we've held fast to the goal of interfaith and bringing folks together across different faiths. And so we're very durable. And so I really appreciate that we have resilience and all of us here who keep meeting and connecting with each other. I hope you know how resilient you are and how much hope that inspires in me, and I hope in others. But the other reason that iron is really interesting is, so of course there was the Iron Age back in the day. So there had been the Stone Age and then the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age. And the Iron Age was from around 1200 BCE to 550 BCE. So this was around the period of the birth of Judaism and Buddhism. And so Hinduism started first. I don't know, Harold knows more about these things than I do, so Harold might be able to correct me on this. But I believe Hinduism started first, and of course was not one exact faith, but was a bunch of faiths. And of course, there are indigenous spiritualities that have always been practiced in different places around the world. But then during the Iron Age, there was the birth of two great traditions. And after that, shortly after that, Christianity came to be. And then after that, Islam and Sikhism and the Baha'i faith. And paganism was practiced as an indigenous tradition, has now had a resurgence. And so during this time, there were a lot of changes in the world and in international politics, and also in the global spirituality, and the birth of the idea of one God. And part of what was so the Iron Age is when there was the discovery of iron, and they realized it could be used because it was more durable than bronze, which was the main tool before that. But the main way that iron was used is as a tool for farming and for building things like that, but also mostly as a weapon. So iron made really good weapons. And so I looked it up in a few different faith traditions to see where iron has been referenced. And it's usually referenced regarding weapons. And so it's mentioned, the word iron is used 91 times in the Bible. And sometimes it's talking about tools, but that isn't as common as when it's talking about being used for violence in some capacity. So in Deuteronomy, it says he will put an iron yoke on your neck until he has destroyed you. And then it describes the Canaanites fighting with iron chariots and having to oppose armies that have many, many weapons made of iron. Egypt was described as an iron smelting furnace. And it was said that that's how they had so much power that they could take over part of the Middle East and, of course, enslave the Israelites at the time. I will give you horns of iron. I will give you hooves of bronze. And through this, you will break to pieces many nations. And this was God's promise through the prophet Micah, that iron could be used to break to pieces many nations. And so that's in the Jewish and Christian traditions. In the Quran, iron is mentioned 5 times, sometimes again as a tool, but other times it says in the afterlife, there will be maces of iron that are used to punish unbelievers or those who've committed so many bad things that they cannot go to paradise. And then there's a promise that God sent down iron, in which is material that you can use for mighty war, which is in Surah 57. In Hinduism, the Rig Veda mentions that there are beings that brandish an iron knife or iron spikes and use these to go to war against their enemies. And sometimes these beings are seen as good ones that you want to support and you're very glad they have iron, but other times as your enemies that you yourself are fighting and all the iron that they have. And in the Mahabharata, book 1, it says that Bhavaka then gave unto Krishna a discus with an iron pole attached to a hole in the center. This was a fiery weapon, and it soon became his favorite. So it's kind of ironic that for us, this is our 6th anniversary, and we're really celebrating how durable we are. But really, if we look at iron, we see it's often used for war. But you can see some other passages occasionally that reference what can we do with weapons if we want to get rid of them? How do we get rid of weapons? Well, perhaps we can use iron as a tool of peace instead. We can beat our swords into plowshares, something like that. How can we use a tool that's been given to us, apparently as a blessing from God, but actually use it in a way to try to help? So because it's so durable, rather than using this to harm others, how can we use it to build things that will support everyone, that can actually help everyone? And so I hope that that's what this community can do. So I hope that's what we've been doing. And I think that that is a way that we can use our durability and our iron in a good way to help people. And so I wonder at the time when there was the Iron Age, oh, I see a hand up. Yes, Sue?
In the Baha'i faith, iron's a representation of transformation. So if you have an iron, whether it's a sword or whatever, if you put it in the fire, it transforms. Like there's the physical world and the spiritual world. So the fire's the spiritual world, and it gains the characteristics of spirit, which instead of being dark and cold and hard, it becomes, if it's in the fire, it becomes radiant and glowing. And so it's a symbol of spiritual transformation. So that's a good symbol for iron.
That's amazing. Thank you. And that's actually perfect because what I was thinking of is so when we had the first Iron Age, it's when people started making more tools and then weapons with the iron. But one of the things I love in the Baha'i faith is the idea that we are advancing, that even though, it often feels like you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, that actually it's the opposite of that. We are making slight progress, even as we still have wars and we still have things that are happening that are really causing so much destruction, that we actually are still moving forward and we're coming together as a people. So what if this could be like a second Iron Age? But this time we're actually using it for transformation. So thank you for giving me the language for that, for a kind of transformation to use these same skills so that we can actually help and benefit people. So I think that's what we're trying to do here. And that's what I love. And so I see even today, I know back in the spring, I shared about how difficult it is trying to do interfaith work right now, particularly with the war in Palestine and Israel. And that I myself have been very sad and had a hard time at in many months actually of having a hard time with it, where I see people who in the past I know had worked together, Jews and Muslims who'd worked together, Christian and Jewish communities that had worked in partnership. And right now it feels like that's being severed and these relationships are being pulled apart. And as someone who worked in the region and who's tried to do interfaith work and peace work since 2008, it can be really just disillusioning and depressing to see that, gosh, we try to do all this work to try to bring things together, but it all falls apart. But maybe that's why we need iron, because iron is more durable. It can actually be more durable than the hatred and the misinformation we have about each other and the religious biases and these things that will seek to pull us apart. What if it can actually bind us together? And so one of the benefits of getting to be the spiritual leader here is folks will reach out to me because they say, you know what, I don't know anything about this other faith and I'd like to learn more. So can you point me in the right direction? What text should I read so I can understand Hinduism better? I myself am Christian in a small town, and I'd love to get to know my Muslim neighbors, but I don't even know how to approach them. So what can I do to start to connect with them and get to know people from that community? This is still a confidential thing, so I can't share more about it. But this past week, somebody reached out to me, and it's 2 different religious communities that are discussing moving in together and sharing a building. And some of the complications around that, logistic complications and some other complications, but they want to make it work. And it's so beautiful to see that, that even when we have climate change and we have ongoing war and we have a lot of anxiety about the future and we have online so much misinformation and purposeful hatred that's put out to try to divide us, that there are still people trying to learn more, trying to reach out, trying to connect with others. And so I love for our sixth anniversary, I love the idea of us as iron, that kind of iron for good. But also in Buddhism, six is an important number because it references the six perfections. And these are the perfections that I hope we can live into. I hope we've been doing at least some of these before, and I hope we can in the year ahead. And these perfections are generosity, generosity of spirit, but also of financial means. So when we have some money, how do we share it with others? When we have some time, when we have resources of any kind, how do we share those with others, including folks in different faith traditions? Morality is the second one. So having like holding ourselves to an ethical standard, not promoting violence, not trying to steal or do anything that will harm others, take things from them, try to promote anything that would hurt them in any way, but holding ourselves to a very high moral standard. Having a lot of patience. I think maybe that's what we need during this time when it feels like there is so much hatred around us. But how do we stay patient? How do we keep working on it, even if it feels like, gosh, I'm trying to build this connection with this community or these people, and it just feels like I'm just churning or like, stuck in the mud with this, but we have to have patience, keep working on it. How do we promote diligence? That's the fourth one. So again, the same, we're going to keep working. We're not going to give up. We can still promote this. We can still come together and have a peaceful world. How do we work on concentration? So in Buddhism, concentration is how you can actually have your practice, how you can stay still, even when you have all your emotions coming up, all your thoughts, your monkey mind is taking over. How can we concentrate? And so, especially in this distracted age, how do we concentrate and focus on what's really important and not get kind of bogged down in the weeds of other small things that could take up our time, but really focus on what's most important. And finally, having wisdom or prajna. So I believe the interfaith is very wise. It puts lots of wisdom into the world. The idea that the divine is actually the same, is present in all beings, is present for all of us. And as we've grown up in different places and backgrounds and cultures, that's looked different for us. But really, there's wisdom in taking the time to learn from one another and understanding how the divine is shown up in others' lives. Because truly, I don't believe that that's a totally different spirit or being. Really, we can learn from one another. We can understand others' perspectives on these things. So I hope that in the year ahead, we'll practice these six perfections of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. And that together these can, as Paul G said, help us last not just 6 years, but 16 or 60 or 60,000 years. So we can keep putting forward this spirit into the world and hopefully help bring about peace. So that's my hope for us. Paul G, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing the wisdom from all the different faiths. I just thought for completion purposes, I'll just share from Sikhism's viewpoint,
Yes,
whatever you
please.
shared about the iron. Yes. And there are also six beautiful messages that we talk about in our scriptures. And the first one is so beautiful. It says, I have been transformed from being a rusty iron into gold the moment I came into contact with the Guruji, which is the philosopher's stone. So that's the first perspective, that we are all irons. Our minds are so rusty, but the moment we touch the philosopher's stone, we become like gold. Number two, iron is also talked about when we talk about wisdom cannot be found through mere words. To explain wisdom or true wisdom is as hard as iron. That's the second perspective. The third perspective is about coming to a society of holy, like minded people, like what we do every 2 weeks here, because when we come here, just like you attach iron to the wood in a ship, for example, the heavy iron will not sink, but because it's attached to the wood, it will swim across. And in the same way, we will also be able to swim across in the society of saintly people. Number four, it is the most beautiful part about and the power of what we call transformation from a manmuk to a gurmukh, which is the evil-minded people who follow what their mind teaches them rather than follow what the teachings of the guru, the master, the scriptures are. So there are many more beautiful lessons, but I thought I would just share this for, since you say we learn from everyone. Thank you so much for the time. Please forgive me for the mistakes, and let's all come together to the society of holy people from all different faiths and also be saved. Thank you so much.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. See, this is so cool. I love in our community, it can be like, wait a minute, I don't know anything about iron in the Baha'i faith or in Sikhism. And just like, actually, here we go. I know all this. Like, what a fantastic resource this is. And yes, Broadus?
Oh, hi. A reflection about iron. When I think about iron, when I was in the service, and myself and my dad was in the military as well, and he always talked about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and he always used to say, "Iron sharpens iron," and he talked about it in terms of the fact that of accountability. You surround yourselves with like-minded people who are on this pointed in the right direction, who are on the same path, and that you hold each other accountable. You encourage each other. You uplift each other. You, well, he used to say chastise, but, you hold each other accountable. When you see something, you say something about it, and you do it with love, of course. So that's what I think of when I think of iron. Just like I guess a hammer and tong, and you're just keep each other sharp, keep each other focused, keep each other uplifted. So that's what I think of when I think of iron. And of course, the gym too. We go to the gym to do what? Pump iron. And so that means there, I see it on a bigger level. We seek to improve ourselves. So iron can be used as a tool for improvement, not only physically, but spiritually as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yes, and Harold, and then me, because I have something to share at the end.
Yeah, Cathy, when you were sharing about iron, I was thinking immediately about technology and infrastructure. And, for example, in the late 1990s, I was using snail mail and fax. I was trying to do interfaith work with snail mail and fax and the telephone. And then suddenly I got into email. Someone enlightened me with a different infrastructure. And I helped organize a big interfaith conference at UBC. It had 1,000 people. And I almost have like a mystical relationship with technology. I don't understand it, but I see what great power it has. And I think of, for example, you send a message and you can talk to people in Japan. That's what I was doing. Japan, India, and all over Europe, and organizing people from all over the world. And I see that you have used technology so beautifully, for the Living Interfaith Fellowship. I especially when the COVID came along, and so the Living Interfaith Fellowship could suddenly be online, right? And I found, there was hope. People were connecting to do devotions that are in different time zones, you know? So on one hand, it was a horrible, nightmare for humanity, but infrastructure and technology really could be used in a very positive way. I think of you and Samir as sort of incarnations of the positive use of technology. I think Samir has really helped. I've seen him make a gathering online go so smoothly, no one even notices that we're not there in person. And anyway, I love the use you've made of technology. It shows how all these bounties that humanity has can be used for horrible purposes or for very good purposes. So that was a very universal theme you were developing in your talk about iron. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, that's wonderful. I really appreciate that. And I can get down about social media and screens and things. So actually hearing it in that way, see, just like you said, that's so helpful. So, as some of you know, I have some good news to share today. I should say it's actually bittersweet news. But so I'm so happy that Reverend Stephen Greenbaum is here. So Stephen is, of course, my mentor. Well, I've known Stephen since 2010. I met him at an interfaith conference in Washington State, and I was there to speak about Israel Palestine and peace work there. And he was talking about how he was starting the Living Interfaith Church. And so he wanted to start an interfaith community in the Seattle area where folks came together exactly like this, except in person. And we took turns and we got to hear from each other and learn from one another. And you never preach about anyone else's faith tradition. You always take the time, and all of us from all different faiths come together and take turns hearing from each other. And I was so inspired by that that my family and I joined. And so I've known Stephen for 14 years now. And so we went to the Living Interfaith Church. So it started in 2010 and it's continued until now. And the bittersweet news is it's actually closing down. So the Living Interfaith Church is shutting down now, and they're giving us their funds. And their members are joining the Living Interfaith Sanctuary. And because we're online, and during COVID, they also moved online. And actually, the reason that we meet on the first and third Saturdays of the month is they always met on the second and fourth. And that way, if folks wanted to go to both faith services, they could always go. So some folks like Rebecca and like Stephen and Steve Crawford and Bill Griffith and my dad, James Keene, have been going to both for years now since COVID. But for a variety of reasons, they're closing down. And so that is very sad, but they lasted 14 years. So that is amazing. And under the leadership of Stephen for much of that time. And then when he retired, under the leadership of Reverend Marie Preftes Arends. And she has been amazing. And so their community has been amazing and is really what inspired me to get into interfaith, to start doing this work. And the Living Interfaith Sanctuary was founded completely even using the same order of service as the Living Interfaith Church. So we came out of them and have been working in conjunction with them. But they're closing down now, and they're giving us, so this is the part of the good news. So they're giving us $30,000, which is amazing, which is more than our budget is around, I think 23,000 a year. So more than a year's full amount of money. And Stephen's been supporting us along the way as well. And so we have more money now, and we have some new members as their members have joined us. So we can actually do some new things that folks want to do in the coming year. If they have a ministry that they are really interested in, such as something around violence against women, or something around the environment, or repair cafes, or interfaith education, we actually have some money for that. And I can also share that 3 weeks ago, I met with the grant writer from a local foundation that gives grants to organizations that they believe are doing things to bring people together in the world, specifically if those things are against hatred, against anti-Semitism, against racism, things like that. And they said, oh, your organization is doing the exact kind of work we want to support. So if you tell me what project you want to do, we can get you a grant for it. And so we actually have more resources now. And so going into this next year, we really want to know as the council, what do folks want to work on? What are the kind of projects we want to do? We've discussed revisiting our charity application through the CRA. And if we want to focus more on spiritual ministries, if we want to focus more on educational initiatives, or again, things in the community. And the person I spoke to who would help us apply for charity status said, if you need to get charity status, you have to tell them exactly the kind of stuff you want to be doing over the next 10 years. You can't say, okay, let's get it now. And now in 2 years, we're going to add a totally different program. It's different than what we first said we were doing. So they said, really start planning, start thinking through what are the things you want to be doing. How do we want to grow? What kind of stuff do we want to add? Do we want to have more meditation? What do we want to be working on? And put all of that in the application. And she said, because we've been around, when we first applied, it was our first year as an organization. And so we did not get it for a few reasons. But she said, I think now you've lasted long enough. And I myself have been doing this work for a long time. And so if we can show this is the stuff we're committed to doing, she has strong faith that she could help get us charity status. And now we have the finances to work on some things we want to do. So that is my good news, albeit bittersweet because of the church. So please think about it. Start thinking about what you want us to work on and what you want to be working on. Please don't just send me things you want me to do. I am very busy. What are things that you want to do with people here, including me, but also with other people here? What are the things we want to be doing going forward? So that is our very good news. I look forward to hearing from you in a really good conversation with Dan Maylink. One of the things I said is it's important to me that folks don't just come twice a month and then go home and never think about any of this again. I hope that it's affecting us in a good way in the rest of the world. So one of the things he said that I agree would be really helpful is after this, each week, I want to have a time where we kind of put it out there, like, what's a real life moment in interfaith for you? What's interfaith in the real world like? In the last couple of weeks, did you reach out to someone from a different faith? Did you read up on something? Did you research something? Did you visit another faith tradition? How is this affecting you? Not just here. If you love it here, that's awesome. But also, what are we doing to help promote this? And so, yeah, so please let us know. Please send your ideas and thoughts to Rachel, Living Interfaith Sanctuary @gmail.com, and start talking to us about it, because we actually have the means to do some really great stuff in the world. So thank you.